everyone, welcome to the November 2017 Friday Flashback pay-per-view review from the CC Network. I'm Freddie Thomas, your ever-reliable host as always, and for the first time in a month, this show is back, looking at your favourite wrestling pay-per-views from the past, and we continue with our Big Four series entering another calendar year, this time by looking at the 2004 Royal Rumble. Now, the year of 2004 came round with Evolution holding every male title on Raw, while Brock Lesnar continued on a dominant path as Paul Heyman ran roughshod over the brand, echoing his red-branded counterpart in Eric Bischoff in very heelish ways. The Guerreros had bad blood spilling over, Triple H and Shawn Michaels looked to quote-unquote end their rivalry once and for all, while Chris Benoit had been given the unenviable task of earning his world title dream of 18 plus years from the #1 spot in the eponymous Battle Royale. This event had some tantalising matches to its name, but could it build up from a poor Survivor Series just 2 months prior? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's by reviewing it right here and now. WWE Royal Rumble 2004 took place on the 25th of January 2004 at the Wachovia Center, formerly the First Union Center, now the Wells Fargo Center, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, with 17,289 fans on hand to see whether Benoit could indeed get the job done. Now, this wasn't the first pay-per-view to be held at the venue, but its history is not a bad one, first holding an event with In Your House Mind Games in 1996, with it going on to host WrestleMania 15, Unforgiven 2000, Survivor Series 2006, which will be reviewed at some point by this show, Night of Champions 2009, Money in the Bank 2013, the 2015 Royal Rumble, which of course is the one that made Reigns break the internet with his victory, and of course, most recently, the abomination that was Battleground 2017. And if you want to see this channel's review of that show, then you can search it up on the main page. Now, Puddle of Mud's Nothing Left to Lose was the theme song, which was very, very forgettable stuff, which was replaced by even more forgettable stock music on the network and DVD versions. So let's hope this event isn't on the same level. And with that, I haven't analysed the pay-per-view for quite some time. It's going to be good sinking my teeth into this thing. So let's get going. We kick things off with a World Tag Team Championships table match from Monday Night Raw. Try saying that 4 times quickly. As Evolution's team of Ric Flair and Batista defended their newly won titles in their first major pay-per-view outing against the Dudley Boys in their ECW backyard. Now this could get spicy. The Dudley Boys, having successfully reclaimed the World Tag Team Championships off a very long feud with La Resistance before Survivor Series, saw themselves in very tumultuous territory following the Thanksgiving pay-per-view, because they were on the losing Team Austin, meaning Eric Bischoff was not going to give them a good time as they defended their titles against all comers without the pressure on them declining, leading to a tag team turmoil match at Armageddon with the belts on the line. They got through every single team and seemingly retained it, only for Bischoff to come out and add Evolution's Batista and Ric Flair to proceedings as the super stable scalped the titles from the exhausted champions and subsequently from everyone else who had a title on the main show who wasn't female. Now, Evolution, using their corrupt power-sharing position with Bischoff, who of course had been at the Dudleys' throats earlier on in the year, ensured their time was a torrid one, as every single match they attempted to partake in either got skewed against them or was unfairly taken away from them thanks to interference or bogus refereeing decisions. 2 weeks before the show, though, a table was teased as Coach started interrupting both of the team's matches, and with the Dudleys finally getting sick of all the shenanigans, they ended up putting Coach through a table when Ric Flair was not available to do so. So the 3D was used to good effect, as the tag team table match was signed just 6 days before this pay-per-view. And even with their signature match at their disposal, Evolution's power proved too much for the guys from Dudleyville, albeit with a little bit of help from Jonathan Coachman, surprisingly, who was at the commentary table simply because he wanted to see how this match went. And he was looking for a lot of retribution as he distracted the challengers, allowing Batista to slam Devon through the one single table, it wasn't an elimination match obviously, to gain the win after quite a meagre 4 minutes and 23 seconds to keep Evolution's stranglehold on the tag team division very secure indeed. Now, even though this match was added to the card quite late, it did have a decent amount of heat, so you'd hope that it would actually deliver something decent. However, despite the fact that this match had a stipulation, a weapons stipulation I may add, it felt incredibly rushed and looked very sloppy in move execution for both teams, despite them shifting offense through some nice steady pace to keep it grounded. It was over quicker than it had any right to be, and it's because of Evolution and Jonathan and Coachman. You'd think that Evolution would want to look as strong as humanly possible in their first major pay-per-view title defense as tag team champions, but thanks to the fact that Coach was the mitigating factor in their victory, it really didn't help their cause. And okay, I will give Coach's involvement some credit for upping the psychology and storytelling a little bit, and it of course meant that the crowd reaction for the Dudley Boys was going to help in a little way as well. The fact is though, even with those small elements, this match just did not even last long enough to project much more than what it was, which was a noble fight back by the Dudleys, but an inevitable powerful squash by the new champions. And it ended up getting a quite utterly terrible half-a-star rating, despite a little bit of flickering respectability still remaining in its eye. This just wasn't the hot start to the show that many expected it to be, and sadly, the pace of this night would not slow down just yet, considering when you've got what's coming up next. And what was that match, you may be asking? Well, it was for SmackDown's Cruiserweight Championship as Rey Mysterio defended the title against Jamie Noble, and I must also remind you that Mysterio had also recently won the belt. So logically, you can probably tell where this match result was going. Nonetheless, Survivor Series didn't go well for Mr. Noble because not only was his match for the title against Tajiri pushed back to Sunday Night Heat to make way for that Mark Cuban segment that benefited nobody, Akira and Sakata cost him the match, meaning that inevitably it was all for nothing. The following week he got his rematch with Tajiri's henchman being banned from ringside, but Nydia, his blind girlfriend, who was of course blinded by Tajiri's green mist, cost him by distracting him, which led him to question whether Nydia was actually blind in the first place. Now, of course, we know that not to be true, but of course when you're playing a character and acting, you kind of need to suspend your disbelief for a little bit. Now, she once again cost Noble another match, this time against Akio, by taking Tajiri out at ringside, and once again distracting the Pitbull, stopping the victory from coming. The following week against Sakata this time, Noble pulled and pushed his girlfriend around, saying that Tajiri had done so as he picked up the win by pushing her into his opponent. Now, on the final SmackDown of 2003, Noble had his chance to finally go for the title by having a Rey Mysterio-based #1 contendership match. If he could beat the Master of the 619, everything would be good, but his use of Nydia as a distraction this time backfired, allowing him to get a L in the loss column, ensuring that Mysterio would go on to the first show of the brand new year as a Cruiserweight Championship #1 contender. And of course Mysterio ended up bloody well winning the thing, wouldn't he? Now, all the while, Noble still threw lies at Nydia, which of course she accepted and got quite upset about, especially knowing that Mysterio was trying to tell the truth, logically. Now, the week following Mysterio's victory, Noble had another Cruiserweight Championship #1 contendership match, this time against Tajiri, the man who started this thing, but no-showed, which meant that Paul Heyman put Nydia in the match instead. 2004, ladies and gentlemen, where women could fight the men and not have people go on about how wrong it is. Now, back to what I was talking about. Mysterio made the save in the match following a stiff kick to the skull, but Noble attacked the champion thinking he was attacking Nydia. Not Tajiri, of course, which led to a rematch the following week as Noble showed up this time. Nydia was attacked by Tajiri, Akio and Sakata before Mysterio made the save, only to be taken out by Noble once more, all before Nydia being pushed into the line of the Japanese buzzsaw off a plancha, which allowed Noble to drag his opponent into the ring, get the 3 count, and quote-unquote earn a Cruiserweight Championship match at the Rumble, a match which Mysterio had to prep for by facing Chuck Palumbo of the FBI of all people, which he ended up winning because Mysterio always wins. And of course the fully blooded Italians, Nunzio and Johnny the Bull Stamboli, jumped him afterwards, which turned out to be the brainchild of Noble, who handed the group a wad of cash in return for weakening the champion before the bout on the Sunday. Oh, I don't want to forget this either, but apparently Nunzio and Noble were meant to be storyline cousins, which explains the helping hand. Yeah, even back in that time period, I'd completely forgotten that this was a thing, because no one really made any note of it. Oh well, now could Jamie Noble use this advantage to pick up his first Cruiserweight Championship since 2002, or would Mysterio's momentum towards WrestleMania continue? Well, you know what, it was the latter. I alluded to it earlier, as once again Nydia proved to be a massive hindrance for the challenger, as she tripped Noble up, causing a 619 to give Mysterio the victory after a minuscule 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Yes, this was even shorter than the first match, and it just goes to show that these guys booking this show wanted to make the Rumble go long, but seriously, to the detriment of a match that could have been a lot better with time added to it? I don't know what these guys were doing. It felt like an afterthought in the broader scheme of things. But I will say that the storytelling of Nydia's involvement and the aggression of Noble working the back of Mysterio for a Tiger Bomb was smart as hell, as the fast pace and momentum shifts, of course, was minimal, but it was in the challenger's corner, ensuring it built up for a great rebounding finish from the champion. But there just wasn't enough time for it to make something of itself. It went just as flat as a wet towel on a bad day, and inevitably, this match should have gone on at least 5-6 minutes more, and it would have really done it some good. And even though there was some really decent cruiserweight wrestling at this time in WWE, the matches were not being taken seriously by management, and it showed here. They went fast, figuratively and literally, but that's not what it's all about. Cruiserweight wrestling, especially good cruiserweight wrestling, is about good wrestling. It doesn't matter how bloody fast it goes, because that will wear off after some time, leading to a lot of apathy from the crowd, which is what happened here, and in short, it got a 0.5 star rating. So with one match down apiece, both Raw and SmackDown have delivered matches that are pretty much exactly the same, suffering from obvious timing constraints. So I'm wondering, things have to improve, right? You can't start the night off with 2 0.5 star matches and then think to yourself, you know what, we'll try to make things worse. It has to improve, right? Well, with the next match, hopefully we can get something decent, as both of Los Guerreros collide, as Eddie Guerrero faced off against Chavo after months of build. And it kicked its high horse into gear following their loss at Survivor Series, as Eddie and Chavo's already fracturing relationship got put on even more precarious ground as they were attacked following a match with Huss and Benjamin, with Chavo complaining that Eddie didn't look out for him. Now, Chavo accompanied Eddie to the ring on crutches to support his uncle, but again got assaulted by the world's greatest tag team, although it would have been avoided if Eddie had not decided to use Chavito Heat's crutch against Huss in the match itself. You know, lie, cheat, steal, all that bull. With the nephew again lambasting his uncle for not looking out for him a second week in succession. Now, Chavo, already angry enough at Eddie, tells his uncle not to accompany him for a match with Self and Benjamin, which Latino Heat ignored by coming out in his lowrider and then hitting a frog splash on Benjamin to help his nephew pick up the win, only for Chavo to not thank him and lash out at Eddie for stealing his spotlight in a victory that should have been his on his own. Now, the following week, the Los Guerreros finally got their shot at the world's greatest tag team, with Eddie promising not to steal the spotlight, but he said he would promise to steal victory, which he did after nailing Benjamin in the head with an air filter from the lowrider and picking up the victory not long after Chavo hit a frog splash and got a 2 count. Now, on the final SmackDown before the end of the year, Los Guerreros were in a fatal 4-way bout for the tag titles, looking ready to be champions again. But in a strange case of deja vu, the Bashams performed the switcheroo to pin Chavo and retain their championships. And following Rey Mysterio's Cruiserweight Championship victory over Tajiri, Chavo once again got angry at Eddie for wanting to enter the Rumble match and thinking about that instead of focusing on their upcoming tag match later that night, which they ended up losing. But it was Chavo's fault as he botched a frog splash and ate the pin. However, it was after Eddie told him to take the spotlight by doing the move instead. So whose fault was it? Was it Chavo's or Eddie's? Well, the fans already made their mind up, and Chavo made his notion of that aware by letting his jealousy and anger boil over by saying the fans only loved Eddie, and they never gave him a chance. They never chanted Chavito Heat. Obviously, because Latino Heat just rolls off the tongue a little better. Now, he slapped the taste out of his uncle's mouth, proving he was having enough cojones to do so. However, Kurt Angle came in to interrupt proceedings before a brawl took place. Now, Angle ordered Chavo and Eddie to apologise to each other, which they reluctantly did. However, the harmony did not last long, as their tag team title match against the Bashams ended in defeat, as Chavo once again got pinned. However, following the match, Eddie was beaten down by the champions, while Chavo just took a seat at ringside and watched as his uncle got beaten down, only then to lay down a few vicious punches of his own, turning heel and on Eddie as well, by busting him open in the process. Now, the match between the two for the Rumble was signed a week later, but Eddie had reservations, not wanting to fight his own flesh and blood, telling Angle, who felt responsible for what had happened, to stay out of his damn business and let him get on with it. Chavo Sr., of course, who is now known as Chavo Classic, was there to apologise on his son's behalf, which of course incensed Eddie, who got in his brother's face entrance, only to be blindsided by Chavo, who apparently wasn't supposed to be there, and they both attacked Latino Heat, with ramming up the pressure and intensity on this feud, which led to a tag team match between Eddie and Angle against the Chavos to try and keep the animosity as civil as humanly possible before the big bout, which led to Angle being taken out by a thumb to the eye and giving Eddie an Angle slam, leaving the Chavos to lay waste to their brother and nephew and bust him up real good. Eddie's drive for vengeance was there against his nephew, but he was still reluctant to go ahead with it, wanting to out-wrestle Chavo instead of laying it into him. He wanted to show him some respect in the ring, but could he do it and not let the tension boil over in the subsequent contest? Well, he kind of did. Eddie eventually did get one over on Chavo by out-wrestling him, quote-unquote, hitting a frog splash for the win after 8 minutes and 3 seconds before violently unloading his aggression onto Chavo Jr. and Sr. once the bell had already rung, which was something that was very absent from this contest. And I'm going to tell you right now, if there was ever been a more disappointing match given its build-up, it's this one, as it had been teased for months, blown up in dramatic fashion on television, and been hyped to the hills. Yet this meagre offering was the only match to come from it. Instead of a barbaric contest with Eddie and Chavo beating the ever-loving piss out of each other, which you would expect, you instead have a very restrained bout that goes way too slow to appeal to either man's agile strengths and is too mild-mannered to match the tempo of the feud itself. And Taz and Cole repeatedly hyped up how Eddie wanted to out-wrestle Chavo to prove he was the better man, yet as I noted in the build-up notes, he was more than willing to give his nephew and brother an absolute hiding due to his rage boiling over on the last week's shows. Which would have meant that you would have expected something like that to happen, not when the bloody bell rang, which meant that the match delivered an anticlimactic note and then delivered on the premise of what was actually expected. It was a wasted opportunity. And this match should have been a show stealer. It should have been great, but it fell incredibly flat on its face instead. The match, however, wasn't without some merit, as the psychology surrounding the restrained offensive Eddie did allow Chavo to look good and take the fight to his uncle, who says he takes all the spotlight, as his aggression was more of a focal point. Chavo's aggression was more of a focal point. It wasn't about Eddie, really. It was about making Chavo look good to the fans, but the fans really didn't give a damn, I will say, because they were silent for most of Chavo's offense, and that didn't help matters. Of course, the slaps of disrespect was great, and Eddie's compromising tactics showed how conflicted his actions were, and it was really nice to see. Yet when push finally came to shove, he did mean business, and all was well, but the tension of this match did build nicely, with some momentum shifts coming to make both men feel somewhat equal, even though it was skewed more into the favour of Chavo. But seriously, this was again way too short. If it was given 15 minutes, it would have really told a great story, and Eddie's extreme blow-up would have factored in, and it would have been really good to see who would come out on victory here. Because would Chavo be able to fight back against the aggression and prove he is good enough? I don't know, it would have been brilliant. If this had 7 more minutes, it would have been much more than a 1.25 star match. The crowd were behind Eddie and were waiting for him to better the Chavos, but instead what we got was a stilted and tepid bout that outside of swings to Eddie's offense, they didn't really have much to cheer for at the end of the day, as I've already noted. Now, while I understand what this match was trying to do, its poor timing and restrained booking have come back to haunt it. That being said, though, I love that Eddie did not come out in his lowrider, as he did mean that he wanted to kick the crap out of Chavo. It was not about fun and happiness. He went out there and really went for it. Actually, I think he did come out in the lowrider, but he showed aggression and didn't do any jumping with it. So he kind of got it right, but that kind of shows what this match was about. It kind of did what it needed to do, but then also didn't at the same time. You can see why I'm really conflicted about this. This match could have delivered the goods that it promised to, but just like this card, it's failed to really live up to anything of real value, and we're over halfway in at this point. Something good has to come of this. And hopefully the WWE Championship match, also from SmackDown, will do that. Good lord, as we put the incumbent champion Brock Lesnar against Hardcore Holly, who was challenging for the top belt on pay-per-view for the first and only time in his long and very storied career. Now, Holly returned from his neck injury in the lead up to the Survivor Series, being selected for Team Angle to take on Team Lesnar, but of course, as we noted in that pay-per-view review, his anger and desire for vengeance got the better of him, leading to his disqualification for not only attacking Lesnar before the bell, but also shoving multiple referees to partake in that pleasure of beating Lesnar's face in. Now, while his team did come out victorious in the end, Holly's drive to make Lesnar pay went one step further as he applied a new full Nelson submission finisher to the champion on the first post-Survivor Series SmackDown, with General Manager Heyman sending him to jail and then suspending him until further notice. Now, Hardcore drove his point at home via satellite interview the following week, promising to break Lesnar's neck in revenge for the 13 months of hell that he'd been put through. Now, 2 weeks later, Lesnar, fresh off beating Rey Mysterio with his newly established Brock Lock, got attacked by Holly, disguised as a masked fan at ringside, further amping up the tension. Now, Hardcore might have gotten the upper hand, but Heyman and his management seem to be one step ahead, once again taking action to separate the vengeful Holly from Lesnar by removing him from the building before allowing him the chance to save himself from termination by teaming him with Shannon Moore against A-Train and Matt Morgan, while gaining any match he wanted if that dream team would end up winning. Now, famously, I've got to say this, Lesnar had a title match had beforehand against a hand-picked opponent who happened to be Shannon Moore. They repeated this a few years later with equally funny results, but this was the first time it happened, and the rigged draw thing was utterly hilarious, putting Holly's chances at a major disadvantage when the tag match came round, but he survived a steel chair to the head from an interfering Lesnar to pin Morgan and win his title match against the champion that he'd been clamouring for. And he proved to live up to his name of Hardcore Holly, and he highlighted this by wanting to cause Lesnar pain. But he did it by taking his frustrations out on others as he busted Big Show open and brutalised him with a steel chair. The following week, in Holly's home state of Alabama, he choked Show out with a chair in a brutal street fight before taking the fight to Lesnar at ringside as the animosity further increased. And with only 2 weeks to go until the Rumble, Big Show put a 50-feet restraining order on Holly to not only protect himself, but seemingly Lesnar too, which works as Lesnar was not goaded by Holly, who kept his distance as the title bout approached rapidly. But the Big Show, however, was getting quite irritated with Lesnar using him as a bodyguard throughout this restraining order period, and stated that he will be the next in line for the title bout, regardless of who wins at the Rumble. So Lesnar had better be careful what he does around Big Show. Now, in a handicap match with Heyman looking on, Lesnar walked out on Big Show, which in turn left him at the hands of Hardcore because he was outside the restraining order status and went for it. Gave the champion one final beatdown to show who had the ball firmly in their court. Now, could Hardcore Holly defeat the most dominant WWE champion of then recent times and claim the ultimate prize? Or would Lesnar prove too tough for even the most bullish of men and survive with his neck intact? Well, the answer is the latter, because you honestly wouldn't have expected anything else, as Lesnar walked to an easy victory following an F5 after 6 minutes and 30 seconds of incredibly mundane stuff. And seriously, I have to call it mundane stuff because calling it action would be an insult to what action is. Now, considering the aggression and intensity leading up to this, you would expect it to warrant something violent. And while we got some brawling early on to substantiate that, the rest of it was a ground offensive by Holly, focusing on wearing down Lesnar's head to break it, and then vice versa, as the champion tried to take weakness out of Hardcore Holly and making his surgically repaired neck be his undoing. Now, while that sounds grand, it didn't deliver on the psychology that it needed to, as the match was way too short to give much to the viewer, or the lack of a hardcore stipulation to capitalise on the vengeance set mind of the challenger, and the power of the champion really damaged it. And I can blame the last man standing match that Raw will have next for neutering the potential for this match and losing it a lot of points. Then again, did anyone really think that Hardcore had a chance of beating Lesnar? No, but it was really nice to see Bob Holly, after years of hard graft and service for the WWE, to get a title shot at a Big Four pay-per-view. And it had the story behind it to make itself great. This match could have been something of real substance, but instead it was a lackluster stinker that didn't bring out the best in either man, as the crowd sat on their hands as an abominably slow bout lacking in vigour ended up ensuring that the build-up that was brought in droves just arrived in their laps and just melted off them. Nothing happened in this contest that was worth noting at all outside of the neck working, and that is the minimal thing that I can highlight. Was this bout worth $40 of your money at the time? No. So what the hell do you think it was going to be critically? It's a big fat 0. The build-up made me believe that this match was going to be something fun, something violent, something aggressive, something that would have made SmackDown's main event look like it was worth watching. But no, this was a humongous letdown that just disappoints the more I watch it. And I would avoid this like the plague if I were you. I mean, sure, it's not Steiner versus Triple H at the 2003 Rumble bad, but my God, it is one of Lesnar's worst overall, and it certainly is down there in one of Hardcore Holly's stinkers. He didn't have any technical classics, but my God, he did not deserve this. And honestly, this bout got a 0 thanks to creative underbooking for a match that really should have been a lot more than what we got. And hopefully now we're going to get something good, because thus far on this pay-per-view only one match has gotten above half a star, but not by much, ladies and gentlemen. Raw's main event of the last man standing match between Triple H and Shawn Michaels had the unenviable task of actually delivering something. Hopefully, it would be a very easy job for two guys who know how to put on big 4 pay-per-view matches properly. Now, Michaels had a rough time post-Survivor Series, having to deal with the guilt over, through no fault of his own, being the man who, in Bischoff's words, cost Stone Cold Steve Austin his career. And while Triple H and Evolution consolidated power, he was being put through the ringer by his former partner's stable, even though he wasn't taking it lying down, as he got one over on Batista, the man who, of course, caused the loss at Survivor Series at Armageddon, before the villainous group swept all the belts. But he managed to get one over on the game, pinning him in a tag match, earning him a shot at the world title the following week, which he had won if it wasn't for Bischoff reversing the decision, as both men's shoulders were on the mat at the same time. Now, Michaels lashed out at Bischoff, which then got him fired. Only for Stone Cold Steve Austin to come back through as the result of Mick Foley's petition. We will get to his potential involvement in this night later, as he rehired Michaels and offered a rematch, which would take place at the Royal Rumble. And seeing as both men couldn't get up following this bout we just saw, it was made a last man standing match to prove that Michaels could put the game down for good this time. Both former friends did what they did in 2002, throwing insults back and forth at each other throughout their history. You know, that tired stuff, saying, oh, you can't wrestle anymore, your back was horrible, I took the mantle and made DX mine, and I became the star, and you're just here for showmanship or whatever. You know, you've heard it all before, because they are technically recycling a feud that you've already seen back a couple years. Just saying. Then again, would it be possible for one man to succeed over the other? Would Shawn Michaels finally, just like he did at Survivor Series 2002, vanquish his foe and win the World Heavyweight Championship? Well, after a bloody bout, and a quite bloody one at that, a dazed Michaels hit the game with a super kick, but could not get up to the count of 10, and neither could the champion, resulting in the match being declared a draw, with Triple H retaining the title after 22 minutes and 46 seconds. No wonder the rest of the matches went short, because alongside a 1 hour long Rumble, they had this on the card, taking up an absolute ton of time. And again, this had to be better than the rest of the card. Let's find out if it did. Now, this match continued a feud that spent all of 2003 in hibernation, hoping that people hadn't forgotten that it didn't conclusively end at Armageddon 2002, because of course they spent time in matches alongside other people trying to get one over on each other. Then again, they hoped it would still remain fresh. And thankfully, it does remain fresh. But this match, despite living up to its moniker in a figurative fashion in terms of the result and delivering in copious amounts of blood, there was just something missing here. The fact that despite these two despising each other to the point that they do, it didn't feel as intense or as violent as it could have been. This was portrayed as a bloodbath, but never seemed to reflect it in terms of action taken, as it was a psychological war instead, which was great in amplifying how ruthless Triple H can be without having to go OTT, but I would have appreciated some more spots to really take this match to the next level. The repeated near falls and the reactions of both men allowed the energy to flow back to a meandering bout that switched momentum well, but went slower than many thought it would be, allowing this to build tension, but thanks to its ending, not allowed for a resolute conclusion to satisfy the crowd that had been slowly but surely getting themselves involved with it. It was an enjoyable and fun match that did well to gain a 3.25 star rating, but after seeing their original 2002 5-star SummerSlam bout, and remembering the 3 stages of hell a few months later proving to be much more violent than this, I would have expected these two to deliver something more akin to their rivalry's history rather than holding things off until June for the inevitable Hell in a Cell match that they partook in to fully unleash their violent potential again. Which means that while this match is good, it's definitely nowhere near where it honestly should have been. And it makes me realise they underbooked this as well. The thing is though, unlike every other match on this card, it had time to develop into something more. And for the first time on this card, I'm actually happy with what I have here. A 3.25 star is no easy feat. And to have it on a card that has disappointed me so heavily, I can tell you right now, this is a good sign. I am hoping to all hell that the 2004 Royal Rumble, the main event of this show, can do just as well and end up on even keel, because we need this night to end as strong as it can get to salvage whatever rating it can. Oh my, this could be very interesting indeed. Now, Raw and SmackDown both had storylines going into this match. On the red side of the divide, it was the escalating rivalry between Randy Orton and the new co-GM of Raw, Mick Foley. Now, in his first appearance since being punted down a stairwell following bad blood in June, Foley had made himself GM in the aftermath of Austin's dismissal, instigating his inevitable return while making Raw a living hell for the heels, including threatening to fire quite a few of them in the process for making himself the special guest referee of RVD Orton in the IC title match at Armageddon to ensure that Evolution did not interfere and jeopardize the contest. Then again, he had to count Orton's 3 count and call it right down the middle as the young man, the Legend Killer, became the champion, while at the time Bischoff tried to psych the Hardcore Legend into a ring return, only for him to back out of an Intercontinental Championship match the next night, which resulted in a spit to the face by the Legend Killer as he was fired due to a loss by forfeit. The former, not Orton, obviously. Now, Orton then goaded Foley to turn up to Raw 2 weeks before the Rumble with a front row seat and a limo for his house being paid out of his own pocket to be ready for him. But he no-showed. And of course, I've already noted that Stone Cold came back, and he came back as the Sheriff of Raw in no small part to Foley's efforts, and he ordered him to show up at the front row seat at the Rumble to prove that he's still the tough SOB that Austin travelled on the road with in the decade prior. Now, the blue side of the brand had something bubbling quite furiously as Paul Heyman battled against Chris Benoit and John Cena. Now, Cena, using his rapping and foul mouth, had caught the ire of Heyman and Mr. McMahon, while Benoit remained defiant as a power-hungry Brock Lesnar was definitely going after him, because of course, Benoit made him tap. So, of course, Lesnar was going to be pissed off at you and want to eat you alive for breakfast. Now, both men orchestrated their victory in a title match battle royal to get one over on Lesnar and Heyman before the remnants of the WWE Champions defeated Survivor Series team beat the surviving winners of the said match that I've just noted. Now, Benoit won the right to face Lesnar for the title, coming agonizingly close to achieving his dream, only to pass out to the newly debuted Brock Lock, which looks sick as all hell when you go back and see it. It's nuts. Now, Heyman then compounded his misery by declaring he would not be WWE Champion as long as he is General Manager, while Cena had to routinely battle against Big Show in non-title US Championship matches. Yeah, seriously, when you go look back at this, Big Show never defended the title once he won it at No Mercy. It's really, really sad, but he needed to do that to stay in the game, did Mr. Cena. Now, by the time January came round, both men were looking and very keen for vengeance, but Heyman had other ideas put in the in multiple disadvantageous matches, which they ended up winning against the desires of the former ECW owner, who in retaliation made Benoit the #1 entrant for the eponymous Battle Royale, while he threatened to clean Cena's foul mouth out with soap, only to have it backfire as Cena won the first ever washed your mouth out with soap match against Rhino, leading to Heyman having his mouth cleaned out with soap by the Doctor of Thugonomics as Benoit kept him in the sharpshooter. However, their joy did not last long, as they ended up being decimated by the Big Show just 3 days before the pay-per-view, as Heyman looked on extremely confidently. Now, could Heyman do what was needed and ensure that he'd weakened his rivals enough so their victory was not possible? That's what he would be hoping for. But before we got to this match to find out if that was indeed the truth, Heyman and Bischoff brawled with each other in a battle of brand supremacy for some bizarre reason, as Stone Cold Steve Austin came out to shut both of them up and give them stunners. In a segment that wasted everybody's time. It took around 5 minutes, and when you total on top of that the Goldberg-Lesnar segment that built up their Mania 20 match, I guess it's split even. One wasted everybody's time while the other one was used for what we presumed then was a good thing. We'll get to WrestleMania 20 in about 1 or 2 months' time. We'll see how the schedule lines out. Anyway, at least it did calm everyone down from a last man standing match, ready to make sure they were in their soul ready for this contest, which of course was never in doubt, as Chris Benoit went the distance. All 1 hour and 1 minute and 30 seconds of it, last eliminating the Big Show to win the 2004 Royal Rumble and earn his well-deserved and long-awaited WrestleMania title match. A match that Heyman could not deny him anymore. Now, I used to always rank this Rumble alongside the modern-day classics of the match type. 2001, 2002, 2007, 2012, and 2016. Those Battle Royals were the ones that I really liked due to their storytelling, and if not that, high drama. Yet upon analysis, I'm left bemused that outside of that and a good crowd reaction, this match doesn't hit the highest of marks that I had set it mentally in my head. It was still enjoyable as it could be, with it lasting a solid amount of time, as it fluctuated in pace relatively well, only being let down majorly by the big stars who cleared the ring not coming through as strongly as expected, while the segue by Ernest the Cat Miller was most unwarranted and I wish to have that expunged from my brain, but it never bloody will. The crowd were on their feet for its majority as they waited for Benoit to win the big one, while the elimination of Goldberg, the tease of Undertaker's return, and the awesome run-in by Mick Foley, which was unbelievable still to this day, unglued them with some of the loudest pops in the Rumble that they'd heard until that point in time. Now, of course, the surprise entrants, though, they were chalk and cheese, really, between the high-end brie of Foley and the completely unpalatable Miller, alongside a lukewarm cheddar with some off-products in it of Billy Gunn. So this category takes this match further down from 4-star territory, because while you have Mick Foley coming in, which is still just about as unexpected as you would think, and Billy Gunn is okay, Ernest the Cat Miller is not worth having. A surprise entrance are what we watch Rumbles for, and to have this match not really have much to say for itself is a bad thing. Then again, it does remind me that they managed to rely mostly on their actual roster for this show. And that's good. This match actually had people who were on the roster making appearances. They didn't have to put people in there for the sake of doing it. Like Haku for some weird reason in 2001. That's beside the point. Anyway, this match was done to do 2 things. 1, deliver on Benoit's story and rivalry against Paul Heyman by winning the big one, and 2, heighten the Foley-Orton feud by taking it to the next level. And this match did that, while also delivering well enough as a match to get a 3.5-star rating and be the best damn thing on the whole night. The thing is, if it had amped up the pace and elimination frequency in places, drawing out the drama between some in the ring by emphasizing their longevity as well as the already noted lack of surprises, maybe we could have seen this achieve the type of rating I envisioned in my brain. Although I am happy to see that this match did still somewhat live up to my expectations, even if it did fall short of its ambitions by the smallest of amounts. This pay-per-view ended on a pretty good note. and I couldn't be happier. However, that does mean, when looking at the whole card as one entity, I'm not entirely sure where I'm going to go with this, as it's now time for me to look at my final thoughts on this, interesting pay-per-view? I don't know if that's the language I really want to say, but here we go. Final thoughts time. Thanks mostly due to the main event, this Rumble lives on quite vividly in my memory, as I'm a massive Chris Benoit fan, then and now still. Outside of his upcoming WrestleMania triumph, this was the biggest achievement for him to date, and I still remember it incredibly well. However, upon watching this event for the first time in a hell of a long time, it has reminded me, in quite stark pretenses, why I only ever remember the main event, as most of this show is a failure on a massive scale. Now, having only 6 matches on a card does limit the damaging effect of having 2/3 of this card be below 1.5 stars. But it's another story entirely to note that 3 of those 4 matches that were bad were below 0.5 star. It's mind-boggling that all of those matches were given so little time to amount to nothing. In particular, the long-awaited Guerrero battle, which was treated like an absolute afterthought when Triple H and Shawn Michaels got the amount of time you would have expected, but they got the time that the Guerrero battle should have been gotten. We've already seen Triple H and Shawn Michaels kick the piss out of each other for 20 plus minutes. Why not give it to the Guerreros instead? This pay-per-view seemed to go at a lightning pace, yet the matches up until the final stages were full of very little substance, making this event seem more top-heavy than many I've seen. It was seemingly all about making Raw's side of the table stronger going into WrestleMania, as they had no other pay-per-views to call their own in the meantime. Now think about it. The Game and the Heartbreak Kid set themselves in stone for the next few months thanks to that draw. Orton versus Foley became spicier, and of course, as we would then find out the next night, Benoit, fresh off his Rumble victory, went to the Red Brand to challenge for the World Championship, leaving SmackDown's contribution to this show, when you actually look at the matches it had, null and void as far as I'm concerned. Not only were their matches terrible, they also had no Royal Rumble winner to claim as their own by the time their show came round on the Thursday. And this is ridiculous. And it really makes me question why the blue hell I went into this pay-per-view with excitement. If I'd known that this had all happened, I would have probably thought, oh good lord, here we go again. Another rubbish Big 4 pay-per-view in this calendar year stretch that we've had. Because since WrestleMania 19, none of these big shows outside of the odd match have fit the bill for what we'd expect. This Big 4 cesspit that since that pay-per-view, that amazing WrestleMania in Seattle, Washington, it's a long way away. It's a long way away now. The light in the tunnel is getting ever so further from my sight and vision. And instead I'm just looking at the bleakness, wondering when the blue hell am I going to review a show that can match that again? Because earlier on this year, I couldn't stop reviewing shows that were really good. And now I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it's not very fun. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen, was this pay-per-view really as bad as I'm making it out to be? Or am I just angry at the disappointment that I got that most of this card isn't worth the time watching it? The one thing I can have in my mind that keeps me at ease is that it was better than 2003's edition. Now, sure, that had the Angle versus Benoit Classic on it, but remember, that had 2 of the worst matches I've ever seen on it. This only had 1-0 and the rest were kind of floating above the black hole of zerodom. So I can at least give it that. The fact is, this show did not better it by much, and it was damn lucky to not have joined its brethren from a year prior on equal or worse footing. Overall, the 2004 Royal Rumble scores a pedestrian 3 out of 10. And you know what? If those latter 2 matches had not scored in 3-star territory, we'd be looking at a 2.5 or even a 2 out of 10 show. That is how bad the undercard was. That is how terrible it was. To the point where I may say it's one of the worst I've seen on a WWE pay-per-view card. And to think they would repeat this kind of abominable match structure and delivery on match quality this year in 2017 with Battleground. To think you have two events of such poor quality in the same venue. I mean, at least this one had a decent Rumble match and a Last Man Standing match that are both worth your time watching to save its own ass. I mean, the 2003 edition had one amazing 5-star classic, which was the only redeeming factor from the entire damn show to save its ass. But you get my point. As ladies and gentlemen, I'm a bit annoyed. It's been a long time since I've reviewed on this Friday Flashback show a pay-per-view that's actually of decent quality. But the one thing I can say is that the next pay-per-view I have up on my schedule is one I've never seen in its entirety before. One that I hope will balance the positive-negative equity branch in good fashion. Because I'm going to be reviewing the 1992 SummerSlam next. And I cannot wait to see if that can better this, because if it does, I'm going to be the happiest person in the world. But if it doesn't, then we have WrestleMania 20 after that, and I already know where that card's bloody going. So you know what? Pray for me. Pray for the Friday Flashback show, and pray for my sanity, that we can finally have a decent old pay-per-view to look at. Because if not, I could go completely and utterly insane. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Royal Rumble 2004 Friday Flashback review is done. And I'm happy to get this one out of the way, because I've been sitting on it for over a month due to Equestria Girls Month. And that, of course, was very important to do. But of course, we're back to regular service with the wrestling content for the first time in a while, and I hope you've enjoyed this elongated but nice return to the past, because it's nice for me to reflect on my first year and a half plus of wrestling at this time, and remember how happy I was back then watching wrestling, not this cynical, analytical bastard that you are hearing before you. So what did you think about this pay-per-view? Do you think it was as good as I highlighted? Was it better? Or somehow was it worse? All you have to do is put your comments down there in the comment section, and I'll be glad to read them and respond. And of course, if you do not want to miss the upcoming review of the 2017 Survivor Series and any updates on when the next Friday Flashback would be, because it's not penciled in currently, you can do that by clicking the subscribe button down there for when any video uploads, you'll get it immediately. And remember to click the bell icon so you don't miss anything. And you can also follow this channel on Twitter at CCNetworkYT to ensure that if any announcements do come regarding upcoming videos, you will know about them first. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I haven't done a Friday Flashback pay-per-view review in a while, and I am very happy to be back and keeping the ball rolling. So next time, with the 1992 SummerSlam being in the crosshairs, I am hoping the sun shines down on me, and the show will be well worth looking at. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been people listening. This has been a returning Friday Flashback pay-per-view review for the CC Network, and I will see you all next time.